Hey, all this horror is making us hungry. Anyone want Taco Bell? Number 10, North Carolina. Population 11 million. Homicide rate 9.2. North Carolina had 295 serial killings from 1992 to 2019. And Henry Louis Wallace, also known as the Taco Bell Strangler, was one of the most despicable. He tormented and murdered 11 black women of low socioeconomic status, taking advantage of the police's slow response time and tackling his criminal rampage. This allowed him to claim more victims from 1990 to 1994, leading to substantial criticism of how the investigation was conducted by the Charlotte police. In either case, what happened to Wallace's victims is nothing but an awful tragedy. Now let's look into a certain devil who went down to our next state. Number 9, Georgia. Population 11 million. Homicide rate 11.3. Keeping up with our trend of escalating violence, Georgia had 409 serial killings from 1992 to 2019. And from 1979 to 1981, it's believed that Wayne Williams, also known simply as the Atlanta Monster, slayed from 2 to 30 victims, many of them children. Williams had a variety of modus operandi, from shooting to beating to strangling, and in all cases he displayed extraordinary cruelty. He even made his way into the second season of Mindhunter, which carries a certain degree of serial killer prestige. Number 8, Ohio. Population 11.8 million. Homicide rate 8.5. Ohio had 505 serial killings from 1992 to 2019. But from 2007 to 2009, the most notorious killer in Ohio was the Cleveland Strangler, Anthony Sowell, who murdered 11 to 14 black women, all but one of which were mothers. He was eventually caught and sentenced to death, but terminal illness took him before the metaphorical hangman could. Our next diabolical killer wasn't so lucky. Number 7, Illinois. Population 12.5 million. Homicide rate 10.9. We're getting into the really heavy hitters now. Illinois gave us 680 serial killings from 1992 to 2019, but none were more repulsive than the killings that took place between 1972 and 1978. We're talking about John Wayne Gacy, the killer clown, whose murderous rampage claimed the lives of 33 or more boys and young men, whose bodies mainly ended up wedged into the crawlspace below Gacy's ranch-style house. Why do some people call him the killer clown? Because he sometimes performed as Pogo the Clown at local events. But Gacy isn't the only killer who tried to cozy up with children. Number 6, Pennsylvania. Population 13 million. Homicide rate 8.9. Pennsylvania had 462 serial killings from 1992 to 2019. But we can't think of any more disturbing than Harrison Graham, a mentally disabled drug user who murdered 7 women from 1986 to 1987. When not entertaining the local kids with his beloved Cookie Monster doll, he was strangling women to death during sex and then desecrating their corpses. He was only caught when his neighbors detected an incredibly foul smell emanating from Graham's apartment, where he was storing remains. He might have killed many more if he had the same body disposal habits of our next killer. Number 4, Florida. Population 22.6 million. Homicide rate 7.2. Here we enter the top 5 states where you're most likely to be killed by a serial killer. Florida accounts for 933 serial killings from 1992 to 2019. But its most infamous killer was executed back in 1989, Theodore Ted Bundy, one of the most sadistic killers in United States history. He murdered 20 to 36 or more women, often returning to their bodies to perform further indignities. Bundy's charm was his greatest weapon, his ability to manipulate himself into the lives of his targets, often winning their sympathies by faking disability. Their kindness would be rewarded with brutal murder. But is everything bigger in the next state, including body counts? Number 3, Texas. Population 30.5 million. Homicide rate 7.6. Texas racked up 984 serial killings from 1992 to 2019, and the state's most notorious real killer puts even some of cinema's scariest killers to shame. Dean Corll, also known as the Candyman, claimed 28 or more victims from 1970 to 1973. He got his Willy Wonka nickname for his habit of handing out free candy to local children, when he and his accomplices weren't brutally murdering them. Corll and his 2 teenage minions lured victims to Corll's various properties where they would be tortured and humiliated before eventually being murdered.